If you had asked me 3 years ago to describe my marriage, I would have told you it wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I would have talked about Emily, my wife of 9 years, like she was the person who could make a bad day tolerable with just a look. I would have mentioned how we met in 2010 at a friend's rooftop barbecue in Seattle, when the summer lights seemed to stretch forever and her laughter cut through the background noise like a song you didn't want to end. Back then, life felt like a series of small victories. Our first apartment together in Capitol Hill, adopting a golden retriever named Toby, weekend hikes in the Cascades, Sunday morning pancakes. It felt steady, predictable even. And I thought predictable was safe. I'm 38 now, but back then in early 2020 I was 35 and just starting to feel like I had my life in order. I had a stable job in IT project management. Emily worked in marketing at a mid-sized tech company. We weren't rich, but we built a comfortable life. A townhouse in a quiet neighborhood north of downtown. A little backyard garden Emily pretended to care about but really left to me. And a shared calendar filled with dinner dates, concerts and travel plans. Of course that was before the cracks started to show. If I'm honest, I can see them in hindsight. Those tiny red flags that at the time just felt like passing moods or seasonal ruts. Emily started working longer hours, staying late for projects or having client dinners. She seemed glued to her phone in a way she hadn't been before. And our conversations, they weren't fights exactly, but they had this undercurrent of distance. I'd ask her how her day went, and she'd give short, vague answers. The light in her eyes when she looked at me seemed dim. One night, in late February 2020, I noticed she left her phone face down on the kitchen counter while she showered. It lit up twice in 10 minutes. And both times the notification just said new message. No name. No preview. Just that gray, empty placeholder. I remember standing there, coffee in hand, staring at it like it was some kind of locked door I wasn't allowed to open. I didn't touch it. I told myself I trusted her. But it left a mark in my mind like a pebble in your shoe that you can't quite shake. And then came March. The world shut down. COVID hit like a tidal wave. And suddenly Emily and I were home together 24/7. At first it was almost nice morning coffees on the patio, binge-watching Netflix, baking bread like every other bored couple in America. But I could sense something underneath her calm, a tension she thought she was hiding. I didn't know it yet, but just before lockdown she'd started an affair with a coworker. I wouldn't learn his name, Alex, until months later. The irony of being quarantined together while she carried on with him still makes my stomach twist. She was clever about it, switching to messaging apps I never used, taking client calls from the bedroom, keeping her phone on silent. I was too busy trying to keep my job afloat during remote chaos to push too hard. We stumbled through that first pandemic year with what I thought was a truce of sorts. Even some half-hearted attempts at reconnection. I told myself couples everywhere were struggling. I told myself we were fine. By 2021 things seemed level out. We even started making travel plans again. Something to look forward to after months of suffocating routine. Hawaii was her idea. A week on Maui in August, lounging on beaches, hiking volcanic trails, pretending the last year hadn't hollowed something out between us. I said yes because I wanted to believe we still had a us worth salvage. Looking back now, I can see I was walking into that trip blind. The way you walk into a storm thinking it's just a bit of rain. I didn't realize the hurricane had been building all along. Hawaii looked like a screensaver come to life. The kind you see on your office desktop when you're too tired to work and daydreaming about escape. The air was thick with salt and heat, the ocean a shade of blue that didn't seem real, and the smell of plumeria drifting everywhere like it was scripted. For the first couple of days, I let myself pretend we were fine. Emily seemed lighter, laughing more, walking barefoot in the sand like she used to when we first met. We ate fresh poke bowls from a roadside stand, drove the Hana Highway with the windows down, and fell asleep each night to the sound of waves crashing just outside our balcony. But even when things looked perfect, there's a certain way your gut whispers to you when something is off. On the fourth day, it happened. We were at the hotel getting ready to head out for a snorkeling tour. I downloaded the Hawaii Safe Travels app on my phone to manage my vaccine passport. But she hadn't set hers up yet. We needed it to fly back to Seattle in a few days. She was in the bathroom putting on sunscreen when I said I could do it for her. Just log into her email, upload the card, get it over with. She called out, "Sure, go ahead." My phone's on the bed. I don't know if she forgot what was on there or if she thought she'd hidden it well enough. But the second I picked it up, I noticed her messages app was still open. And at the very top, Alex. Not some random contact name, not a coworker's generic label. Just, the preview of the last message was short. "Wish you were here." I don't remember making the conscious decision to open it. My thumb just moved. And there it was, thread after thread of messages going back weeks. Not just logistics or work time. Flirty, intimate, coded in ways that made my skin crawl. Plans to meet up when we got back. Complaints about me, about how he doesn't get me the way you do. Pictures. Not explicit, but and the kicker, messages sent every day of this trip. Even when she was lying next to me under the Hawaiian sun. I just sat there for a moment, holding her phone, listening to the muffled sound of the faucet running in the bathroom. My chest felt tight, like I'd suspected before, sure, but there's something about seeing it, about the undeniable permanence of words on a screen, that changes everything. In that moment, part of me wanted to confront her right then and there. Storm into the bathroom, throw her phone on the counter, scream, until the entire hotel heard me. But the other part, the quieter, colder part, told me to wait. I'd been blindsided once before, years back in my 20s, by someone I trusted, and I'd reacted impulsively, burning everything down before I'd had a chance to protect myself. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. Not this time. Instead, I took a breath, scrolled back to the top of the conversation, and read every last word. I memorized them, not just the words but the rhythm of their exchanges. The way she was with him in text. This version of her I didn't know. I deleted the entire thread, then I blocked his number. Clean, simple. She came out of the bathroom a few minutes later, towel in hand, smelling faintly of coconut sunscreen. She asked if I'd managed to upload her vaccine card. I told her yes. Everything was set. I watched her face as she reached for her phone. I could see the moment she noticed, the quick flicker in her eyes, the subtle hitch in her breath. She didn't say anything, but I could almost hear the gears in her head turning. She couldn't ask me directly without confirming what she feared that I knew. The rest of that day was like watching someone try to smile while their house was on fire. She was jumpy, fidgeting with her phone constantly, her attention fractured. On the boat ride back from snorkeling, she sat on the edge, staring out at the horizon, barely speaking. That night at dinner, she barely touched her food. I didn't press. I just let her stew in whatever storm she'd created for herself. It was strangely one of the most satisfying days of my life. Not because of what she'd done, but because for once I had the upper hand. I knew something she didn't know I knew, and she couldn't admit to her panic without laying her guilt bare. It was like holding a live wire but choosing not to get shot. The plane ride home was long, 6 hours of silence, punctuated only by the hum of the engines, and the occasional clink of ice in a plastic cup. She sat rigid beside me, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles went white. I didn't offer conversation, neither did she. By the time we landed back in Seattle, I'd made up my mind. This marriage was over, but if she wanted to play games, I could play them better. I wasn't going to give her the explosion she might have been expecting. I was going to dismantle this quietly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left for her to hold on to. The days after we landed felt like living in a slow-motion car crash. I was awake, aware, and yet trapped in a haze where every moment seemed to stretch out painfully, like the last few seconds before an impact. I was staring down the end of a marriage that had once been my entire world, but now felt like a house built on sand, shifting, crumbling, impossible to save. Back at our townhouse, Emily and I fell into a brittle routine that felt less like life and more like two strangers sharing the same space out of habit. I would get up early, make coffee, and sit at the kitchen table scrolling through those messages I'd managed to salvage, hidden apps, burner accounts, conversations she'd tried to erase. There was a perverse satisfaction in piecing it all together, like assembling a puzzle where the picture was heartbreak. She was quiet but jittery, like a caged animal sensing it was cornered. Her usual composure was cracked. I could see the guilt in the way her eyes darted away when I looked at her, and the way her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her morning cup. But not once did she bring it up. Not once did she apologize or explain. Instead, there was this cold war between us, silent accusations hanging thick in the air like smoke. At work I was a ghost. Every Zoom meeting felt like a performance. I was there physically, but my mind was unraveling in slow, agonizing thread. Some nights I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying moments from our marriage. The first time we moved in together. The Christmas she surprised me with concert tickets to my favorite band. The way she'd curl up next to me on the couch with Toby nestled between us. All those memories tainted now by betrayal like beautiful paintings smeared with mud. I found myself withdrawing from friends. Calls went unanswered. Texts left unread. I didn't want to lie or pretend, and honestly I didn't know how to say what was happening. It was easier to retreat into silence. But even in my isolation I knew I couldn't stay stuck. I was drowning, but there was a flicker of something else beneath the waves. A stubborn spark telling me I'd survive this. I started to make plans. Quiet ones. Not about confrontation or explosions, but about taking control. I spent hours each evening combing through every digital corner Emily had tried to hide her affair in. Hidden apps, secret emails, burner phones she thought I wouldn't find. I gathered screenshots, saved message logs, anything that could protect me from the gaslighting I expected once I made my move. I was methodical, almost clinical in my approach, which surprised me. I'd thought pain would make me reckless, but instead it sharpened me. Meanwhile, Emily's behavior became erratic. One afternoon she burst into tears after I casually mentioned packing boxes in the garage. She asked if I really wanted to end everything, if there was no hope left. I said nothing. What could I say? That hope had died somewhere between the messages and the lies. That love had turned into quiet resentment. She looked broken, but the cracks ran both ways. The more I held back, the more the silence became a weapon. There were no fiery arguments, no shouting matches, just the unbearable tension of two people who no longer trusted the ground beneath their feet. And every time I caught her eye, I saw the same thing reflected back: fear, guilt, and the realization that the walls she'd built were closing in. It was during those long sleepless nights that I realized how much this had changed me. The man who had once been easygoing and trusting had hardened. I wasn't sure if I liked the new version of myself, but I accepted it as necessary. I was no longer a victim. I was a strategist. And then came the day I told her I was leaving. Not in anger, not in blame, just a calm statement of fact. I had found a small apartment downtown, close to work. I was moving out. She nodded quietly, not surprised. In that moment, we were both strangers saying goodbye to a chapter that had ended long before we spoke the words. Leaving felt like stepping off a cliff and landing on a cold, unfamiliar shore. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but the first night alone, I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, the silence so thick I could almost hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet a strange relief coursed through me. This was the beginning of reclaiming myself. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Emily and I had intertwined lives, shared finances, the townhouse, even Toby, our golden retriever. There was the inevitable legal stuff too. The divorce papers, custody discussions, and financial settlements. But I was ready. I wasn't going to be the guy who got steamrolled. I started by carefully organizing every bit of evidence I'd gathered over the months. Hidden messages, screenshots, texts, even small notes Emily had left lying around. I wasn't interested in public shaming or dramatic confrontation. This was about protecting my future, ensuring the truth was undeniable if it came to court. I remember the night I finally sent Emily a detailed email outlining my knowledge. Calm, collected, and factual. No insults, no accusations, just the undeniable truth laid out like a map. I wanted her to know I wasn't a broken man, but one who had taken control. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. It was quiet power. But as anyone who's been through a breakup knows, the emotional toll isn't something you can paper over with evidence or legal form. Some nights memories crashed over me like waves. How we danced in the kitchen to old Motown records. How she'd rest her head on my shoulder during thunderstorms. The whispered promises we made in darker moments. Those moments hurt like hell. At the same time there was anger too. Anger at the betrayal, the lies, and the way she had tried to carry on a secret life while we quarantined together. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions without stooping to bitterness or cruelty. Then came the moment that felt like poetic justice. The vaccine passport incident replayed in my mind. The fact that I had deleted the thread and blocked him right there in Hawaii. Yet she'd continued texting Alex the entire trip, unaware I was watching silent. That gave me an unexpected satisfaction. Watching her anxiety spiral over those next 24 hours was a strange balm to my wounded heart. She was frantic, jittery, unsure, and I held the power. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of legal meetings, emotional ups and downs, and self-discovery. I started therapy, something I'd avoided for years. Talking to someone who didn't judge, who listened without interruption, helped me untangle the mess of guilt, grief, and anger. I reconnected with old friends, some of whom had faced similar betrayal. Their stories, their resilience, inspired me. I started jogging again, running the city streets early in the morning, reclaiming my body as well as my mind. The physical exhaustion brought a clarity I hadn't known I needed. I also decided to write journals, letters I never sent, pouring out every raw emotion onto paper. It helped me process the layers of pain and slowly build a narrative where I wasn't the victim, but the survivor. The hardest part was learning to forgive, not to forget, not to excuse, but to free myself from the bitterness that could have consumed me. Forgiving Emily wasn't about her, it was about me, about finally letting go of the anger that tethered me to a past I wanted to escape. And through all this, a transformation was happening. I was becoming someone new, stronger, wiser, and more in tune with what I deserved. It's strange how life finds a way to keep moving, even when you feel like you're broken beyond repair. In the months following the final split with Emily, I learned that healing isn't a straight path. It's a series of stumbles, setbacks, and small victories that slowly reshape who you are. After the divorce was finalized in early 2022, I felt this heavy weight lift, but also an unexpected emptiness. Our townhouse sold quickly, and Toby came with me, my little constant, the golden thread of joy that never wavered no matter how dark things got. I moved into a modest apartment near the city's edge, surrounded by the noise of life that felt for once like it was mine to control. The ache from betrayal didn't vanish overnight. Sometimes I'd find myself staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, mind wandering to moments of laughter that now felt like echoes from a different lifetime. But I kept pushing forward, channeling that pain into rebuilding myself piece by piece. One afternoon in the fall of 2022, I took a walk through the park where Emily and I used to go on lazy Sundays. The leaves were turning gold and crimson, swirling in the breeze like memories too stubborn to fade. I sat on a bench watching families play and couples walk hand in hand, and felt a strange sense of peace, not because I'd forgotten what happened, but because I'd stopped letting it define me. I think what helped most was learning to be alone without feeling lonely. I started dating again slowly, cautiously, with an open heart but clear boundaries. I surrounded myself with friends who reminded me of my worth, who laughed with me instead of judging my scar. I found joy in small things: morning coffee at a local cafe, spontaneous road trips, getting lost in a book or a new hobby. Sometimes when the silence settled just right, I'd think about Emily not with bitterness, but with a bittersweet understanding that sometimes people grow apart in ways neither can control. Our story, once full of dreams and promises, had reached its end, and that was Ask ChatGPT.